So welcome to the next in the Presca Lunchtime sessions. These are the webinars. I am Rob Webben. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Presca Sportswear, and we're the world's first climate positive sportswear company. And talking of positive, I'm super excited today to introduce Claire Poole from Sport Positive. So without further ado, Claire, introduce yourself to everyone who's watching now and listening later.
Hello, so I'm Claire Poole. I'm the founder and CEO of Sport Positive. So we work with sport to support them to increase action and ambition on climate change. So that's kind of at the core of everything we do. We work with sports organisations directly. We host a big annual event. We work with the UN Sports for Climate Action Framework. We have a podcast. We have a bi-weekly newsletter. We're basically everything we do. The heart of everything we do is increasing action and ambition on climate change through sport.
Amazing. And so, I mean, you work with some big organizations as well, don't you? Tell us about Sport Positive. And I suppose I know you've got your big summit coming up. So tell everyone about that and the kind of folks you're working with.
Yeah, so the summit is probably the biggest global event that brings together sport organizations that are focused on sustainability and climate change. And there are loads of great regional events, the likes of Basis and Green Sports Alliance and Sport Environment Alliance, that focus on national or countrywide initiatives. We're probably the only global one that brings the community together globally. And really at the heart of that is getting learnings to translate across geographies and across sports, because there's incredible things happening, say, in tennis in Australia and baseball in the US and cricket here in the UK. But if there isn't a forum for people to share those learnings, you have a lot of people with big challenges to overcome and then not really sharing them, and a lot of people reinventing the wheel. So yeah, we partner with UN Climate and the International Olympic Committee on the summit. And yeah, the organisations we work with more broadly and that we're involved with and support through the summit, through the UN Sports for Climate Action Framework, or through our work, the likes of UEFA, FIFA, the Premier League, the NBA, the NFL, clubs, so Premier League and EFL clubs, Bundesliga clubs, Liga, etc. And then tennis. Someone was asking me yesterday about sports, tennis, rugby, cricket, athletics, mass participation events,
everything.
The list goes on. Cycling, yes. So yeah, it's just, for us, it's about how can we connect the people who are responsible for sustainability within those organizations to other people, because sustainability can be a bit of a lonely space in sport. There's huge marketing teams or sales teams, commercial teams, facilities teams, but generally you find in sport that the person responsible for sustainability or CSR is by themselves, and they're also doing something
and they've got other hats they're wearing as well. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
So
yeah, I've seen that.
Create a community for those people to be able to chat to others, learn, share learning, share experiences, best practices, and then try and speed up the process, because obviously climate change isn't waiting for anyone. So we want to try and do as much as we can, as quickly as we can.
Amazing. And there's such power in sport. I think, if we nail it and get that message right, which you're clearly doing a lot of work on, then there's power there for sure. So why you? Why Sport Positive? Why you? What's drawn you to do this? Because it's clearly something you're massively passionate about.
Yeah, so my background's in sustainability, climate change, renewable energy side, and then I kind of brought in the sport. I've always been into sport, played sport, competed, etc. Not at any level to write home about, don't get it twisted, but always participated in team sports and done a lot of long distance running, etc. So yeah, I actually was working for an organisation with UN Environment ahead of COP21, and we were hosting an event at Stade de France, and it was on sustainability and climate change, and no one was talking about sport. So I thought that was a bit strange, and sort of said, I think this is something we should look into, and then made connections, hosted a small event at COP21, which people were like, this is great, and I thought there's something here in terms of a space missing to be filled that we could help with. So we kind of started small, and I started supporting other organizations in this, and then invited UN Climate to one of our events in 2017 to sort of show the potential for sport as a sector to combat climate change. And they were already looking at different sectors to engage with, and then as they came to our event and saw the community that was already starting to form there, that was the start of what's now the UN Sports for Climate Action Framework.
Incredible. So I mean, that's not a lot of time. 2017 the first event, was it 2016?
Yeah, 2015 was the very first one. Yeah.
Right. So you've done a lot since that time. Really, that's fantastic. That's really exciting as well.
Yeah, and it's just great to see the growth and the fact that, even this year, so we've been hosting these we're not a conference company, but we do bring people together annually at this summit. And it's just, even as obviously I'm kind of a spokesperson for the industry as well, but as an organizer of this event, even seeing the trends this year compared to previous years. So this year, for example, Rob, there's a much higher percentage of group bookings of people coming, whereas previously you only ever had one or two because it was one person in the organization that was doing it. Now we're at the stage where sustainability strategies are being rolled out across sport, and then organizations want to bring people along from their facilities team, their commercial team, their comms team, operations, etc., because they don't just want one expert in the organization. They want people to feel responsibility whatever department they're in, which has meant that they're bringing 7 or 15 people along to the summit to make sure that everyone can hear, everyone can go into different things. So that's really fascinating in terms of, as you said, the change over the past few years. I think the mainstream media has helped with that as well, and we work a lot with broadcast to try and get more coverage for the sustainability stories and the climate stories in sport. But that making it more mainstream, organisations launching now sustainability strategies, training their employees, leveraging that passion to drive the change internally, has made us see a step change in the growth for the industry for sure.
That's so good. That's so good. I've certainly seen a massive change, just like you said, the last couple of years, really, in terms of that. Sports recognizing what does this actually mean for us in future. If we're going to be playing cricket in 45-degree heat, all these kind of things which suddenly are being talked about, which never were. And it's scary that we're having to recognize it, but it is great that it is being recognized at the scale. So Claire, do you help organizations with their sustainability strategy, or are you there facilitating the conversation? What's your kind of focus?
Yeah, we do a little bit of consulting. It's not our main thing, to be honest. It's more people come to us and ask for help, and usually we work with others on that. It's not something I push. It helps to pay the bills, Rob, to be honest, because I'll tell you that although the wild money in sport, not loads of it is being funneled towards environment and sustainability yet, in terms of servicing that. So the summit, for example, is an incredible moment, but the big costs that go with that to make it happen at a scale that we want, so it doesn't bring in loads of revenue to help support the other work we do. Things like the sport positive leagues, where we rank the environmental data of major sports organizations, etc. Huge amount of time and research goes into that, and that's not commercial for us at all, because we don't want to partner with organizations and say take on a water sponsor that then looks as though if we change it going forward, we're doing it in the interests of a commercial organization. So stuff like that we want to keep just from us doing it to maintain that integrity, but you need money to spend the time to do all of that research. So in that sense, there's the summit's brilliant because that helps, but the consulting, which isn't one of our main things, and I'd love to be at a stage where we can really just focus all of our time on being a catalyst for the industry, but at the minute we do a small amount of that just to help pay those bills.
And I'm really interested in kind of where the conversation is going, and so we look at mass participation events and how we can help events companies reduce the impact of their clothing, but in reality we know actually the big impact is getting people there, right? The spectators. So is that conversation happening in any real way yet? Because in terms of how we can improve it, because that's the big one, isn't it?
We'll do loads of coverage at some of scope 3 and fan travel are the big things. Ultimately, all sport wants to grow, and that means people traveling to their events. The issue with that, from our perspective, is that we can't have unending growth in sport if we are looking to tackle the climate crisis. But sport obviously wants to increase its fan base, so we're going to have to start being more innovative in terms of how we look at that. A good example of that, which we saw this year, was Wimbledon, for example, who obviously only have a certain amount of seats in their ground. There isn't growth there. Once they've sold out those seats, that's what they've done. And they actually set up a pop-up Henman Hill on the piers in New York for people to get all of their,
that's cool.
Sponsor revenue stream as well, because a lot of their sponsors got visibility there, and they set it up in the piers in New York, a huge screen, all of the sponsors, their gin sponsor, their water sponsor, all that being visible. And then, people could go there sort of be on a hill watching the match with that atmosphere of Wimbledon, but without taking that international flight over to London. So there's things like that where they're happening out of necessity. Some sport has the room to grow, and they're going to be able to increase more and more people flying. But that's one of the ways I think those sorts of innovations is what we might see more of in the future to still, you know, keep the fan base going and try and increase that growth, but maybe try and not have as much many international flights and as much travel.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm fascinated by that. I mean, I saw Tour de France has 1 million people turn up to watch it, but it's so disparate. I can understand it when it's a stadium event, or you know, you have it in a big central population, like you say, a pop-up or something like that. But for something like Tour de France, I can't get my head around how they could possibly deal with that. But anyway, that's not one for us to deal with on this chat. Any thoughts, let me know though. I'd love to hear if you must hear some pretty cool things that are going on. What have you got any brilliant examples of something you've looked at and thought, wow, that's such a change from where we were, a few years ago?
Yeah, I mean, stuff like that. The Wimbledon example, I think, is a good one because it's more on the innovative side. I think to me, there's great things that we're seeing in a more pop-up way. So Forest Green has been highlighted as, one of the standout examples of this for so long, because of, an entirely vegan football club. All the work that they're doing is around sustainability. But even, at Ascot this year, they had, vegan only concession pop-ups, these sorts of things that happen, Wimbledon doing pop-ups to reduce travel, but to enable people to be part of the experience. I think these sorts of, I don't think there's anything that's like, this is the big one, that's showed we're changing. But I think broadly, we're seeing so many more activations within sport and also different decisions being made. So I'm sure you read this year about Santos, who were the Tennis Australia sponsor, who are an oil and gas company, and Tennis Australia have made environmental commitments, and NGOs in Australia pushed back on that and said, you've made these environmental commitments and you've got an oil and gas sponsor. So although that was a 3-year deal, they ceased it after a year because of that pushback. So again, I think part of it is sport leading the way with these activations, and part of it as well is demand from fans or demand from groups outside of it to see these changes as well.
Yeah, amazing. It is, again, there's the power in the sport, but there's also power in the people who come to watch the sport and calling for that change. That's brilliant. Okay. Look, we're almost at the end of the time already, Claire, and I knew it would fly by, as it always does. But is there anything, so in a minute, we've got our 3 questions. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you feel like you'd like to just shout about? When is the Sport Positive Summit? Because people can dial in virtually, right?
Yeah, so the sport is 4th, 5th of October. It's at Wembley Stadium and online. So we've reached capacity for the in-venue, in-person registrations, but we'll still be streaming all of the plenary content virtually. And then obviously you can network virtually with all of the attendees as well there. So that's 4th, 5th of October. But no, I mean, for me, the big shout out really is for if people are listening to this when they listen back, Rob, I guess if they're thinking about being more active in this space, they're in sport and they're wanting to do more in this space, just to know that there's so many resources out there. Often it can feel overwhelming. You can feel very alone in this space if you're trying to drive something and no one else in your organization really cares about it. There's so many associations and councils, BASIS and SANSI and Green Sports Alliance and Sport Environment Alliance and Sport Positive and the UN Sports for Climate Action Framework. And, there's just so many resources out there if you have questions or you need some help along the way, just really to know that it's a really open and welcoming community to try and help anyone in sport who's trying to increase their environmental sustainability efforts.
Oh, I love that. That's so positive. Fantastic. There's people in this space who care about, the environment and planet do tend to be far more open to discussion than I think, others. So that's brilliant. Claire, the last 3 questions, and then I'll let you go about with your incredibly busy day getting the summit done or planned. So, Claire, what does community mean to you?
Community to me is, it's just that togetherness in terms of, I think there's a couple of ways, but the togetherness for sure in terms of community, but also support and help. It's community to me is we bring the community together to try and make things easier for people and more accessible, and show them that there's other people who are going through the same thing as they are, and we can all help each other. So I think to me, community is that support and that ability to access people who can share in your challenges, but also help show you opportunities and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And at this time of kind of massive uncertainty around the climate and environment and biodiversity and all these various things, what is it that keeps you positive and motivated and going day by day?
Yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge it. It's really hard. You know, it isn't an easy space, and it's also what we're always at pains to underline is that this job is never going to be done. We're not going to wake up one day, Rob, and be like, cool, we've finished. What should we do next? Like, in our lifetimes, we are always going to be tackling climate change and the crises that surround it. But I think that to me is also what makes me feel positive about it, of like, if you are working in this space, then you have purpose. Mm-hmm. I would feel more stressed out if this was all happening around me and I worked in a job that had nothing to do with trying to help push it forward. So I think the fact that we're all active around sustainability and climate change, we care about it, and through our work we're trying to make changes, that's what keeps me positive, because I think I feel purposeful within that.
Amazing. And last one, the big one, why should we care about climate?
Yeah. I think a bigger question is, why shouldn't we? Who doesn't at this stage? I think, you know, whilst there's so many causes out there and there's so many things, and I actually had a long conversation with someone about this yesterday, we've got so much on our plates, especially now. We've got an energy crisis, we've got a cost of living crisis, a childhood obesity crisis, mental health issues after COVID, etc. It's almost overwhelming how much is going on. But often, as you try and tackle all of those immediate challenges, you can do it in a way that helps the environment and helps tackle climate change. So by being more active, by being out in nature, by spending time with people, by walking instead of using the car, you're getting physical and mental health benefits whilst helping the environment. If you're more efficient with energy, you're better with food, you're more efficient with water, you're saving yourself money, but you're also helping the environment. So I think part of it in terms of the climate crisis and why people should care is that generally the more environmentally friendly things to do is better for you, better for your health, and better for your pocket as well, in terms of how much cash you've got in the bank.
Yeah, brilliant. Actually, that reminds me of a quote I heard the other day. If you don't look after people, then how can you expect them to look after the environment? So it's all interlinked, isn't it? Yeah. Fantastic, Claire. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
That was brilliant. Really great to get you on the chat. Thank you. Before we finish up, do you want to tell anyone how they can find out more about you, about Sport Positive?
Yeah, totally. Just sportpositive.org has got all of the information about our summit, our podcast. You can sign up to the newsletter there. We've got loads of output on social media, etc. And then our Sport Positive leagues as well, workers on there. So yeah, go to the website or just stick my name in LinkedIn and you'll see all the stuff we're doing.
Brilliant. Amazing. Thank you, Claire. So there we go. We've learned from Claire that sport is and can lead the way. Absolutely. If you're in this space and you give a crap about it, but no one else in your organization does, there's plenty of people out there who do. So check out Sport Positive and get involved 100%. It's been brilliant to speak to you, Claire. So next week, I'll be joined by Temi Latif from My Choice, who's got a mission to break down access barriers using, through amongst other things, cycling. So really, really interesting guy. He's done an awful lot. So please dial in for that. In the meantime, Claire, that was so fun. Thank you. I will let you get on with your planning. Have a brilliant time at Sport Positive Summit. I hope it's as impactful as ever before, or more so. And yeah, it's great to see you. Take care.
Lovely to see you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.